Thanks, guys, for hopping on a quick call for me. I got into a little bit of I wouldn't say argument, but disagreement with my last client about leads. We got a strategy. We're not really executing like we should, but the classic verbiage is marketing hands over a lead. Sales is saying, well, this isn't really a lead. So I'll keep what I said in the room private to make sure y'all prove me wrong or right, and then I'll kind of give you my 2 cents. But Mark, Kristen, in your
Yes.
opinion, humble opinion, what's an MQL?
MQL is a technically defined as a marketing qualified lead. And it's something that's crucial for ensuring that our marketing efforts are focused on generating leads that are more likely to convert.
Okay.
It's an
I'll open up
interesting
the
phrase
floor.
you just said
And
there.
marketing
Or
qualified lead, just for people who don't know, is an acronym for what Kristen just said, marketing qualified lead. So
Right.
if we ever have an acronym, we'll say what it is and not just skip over. So Greg, Ashley,
It's interesting that she said a more qualified.
Yeah, more likely.
Why more qualified versus? Are we talking B2B or B2C here, Derek? What was the scenario?
it's B2C.
Okay.
It's B2C consultative sale.
We want to focus on, those that are more likely to convert because it's an investment strategy. I mean, we want to put more marketing dollars towards the things that are going to provide the most potential to have our sales team pick it on up and close it.
How are you figuring that? How are you narrowing that focal point, Kristen?
So I think that it starts by kind of understanding what the demographic information would be, what type of behavioral indicators we want to look for. Then it goes into source. I mean, this can lead into lead scoring, which I think is a really great exercise for supporting this whole conversation because it enables to look into specific areas or channels or very specific tactics to see, if they're going to close or not. And essentially, there's a lot of data analysis there, Greg.
So, Derek, what's the challenge? I mean, the reality is if I would assume the demographics are what are defined by the sales team within the strategy for the product or service?
Everybody's different. I mean, a lot of people have different scoring metrics. Some people have it. MQL could be just a form fill or a contact us on a website. Really, the conversation in the room, I kind of stopped everybody and said, listen, we're saying the exact same thing, but we're trying to take all the credit. Either marketing gave us a win or sales closed it from a cold call. And really, that's not the conversation to have is who gets credit. It's to make sure that when we do get MQL, we're following up and it's not going to close every time. It's not going to be somebody who's just saying, yeah, I'm buying today. But we should be getting more conversions off MQLs and cold calls. I mean, depending on how your lead process is, it's a raw lead, cold lead, whatever, MQLs, SALs. But the more MQLs you can have, it's just over every company I work for, the more successful that we are. There's less cold calling. There's less prospecting your territory. Marketing is doing their job and they're saying, hey, we've identified somebody who's interested. Doesn't mean they're buying. They're just going and looking at our stuff. They're engaging with our content. Right. As a salesperson, I will take that lead over a cold call who have to go through the first 15 minutes to explain who the heck I am or we are. So marketing gives us a easier at bat, but we're trying to take all the credit. And I'm like, that's completely wrong. Greg and I, we've talked about this for years. If you try to take all the credit, that's less dollars that marketing gets. That's less MQLs that you get because you're saying we don't need marketing. I can just cold call all day. And I haven't met one person in sales who wants to cold call all day. So me and MQL, how to define your targets is a conversation between sales and marketing. It's Here's an example of our current customers, if we have any. This is where they came from, how they came to us. Marketing, take this data and show us what you can do with it and see if we start tracking, are our MQLs increasing? Is our conversion from MQLs increasing? That conversation needs to happen more of, well, you gave me 10 leads last trade show and I couldn't close a one of them. That's a counterproductive.
Yeah.
So when you go to finding MPO targets, it's a joint conversation.
Yeah. Derek, one thing that sparked in my head as you were saying, going through that last bit is not every MQL is going to have the same value or should be invested in from the same perspective. It might be that because it comes in top of funnel, the more appropriate investment for the organization isn't to have the sales team drop by or give them a call right away. It's to put them into a nurture series and to push them a little bit farther down the pipeline. So that cohesive understanding of what we value when we value it, I think is beneficial to all facets of a team.
Hey, Derek, had the client done a buyer journey analysis?
Uh, I assume, you know what happens when you assume, but I believe so. That's probably the next question I should ask them is, show me your entire buyer journey, or at least the first two segments of what I call, which is
Yep.
marketing and sales. Then there could be, clients
Okay.
of this afterwards. But most of the time, the clients that I've worked with, they just say, we just need more leads. And so
Yeah.
we skip the process. And if you slow down and put a process to where we can track if this campaign, like Kristen just said, is this nurture campaign producing anything?
Yeah.
If you don't really have the automations in either software or process, and then the accountability, that's the last thing. I have been in sales for many, many years, over a decade. The amount of times that marketing has just given leads and we haven't followed up just because we're trying to close a deal. Our interest, or I want to get my commission. I don't want to start at the very beginning.
Mhm.
So accountability is huge on how you tackle these leads because, like you said, a ton of work went into the data analysis and all the backwards look to get where we are. If you don't put any accountability in measures, you're just kind of throwing marketing dollars and resources down the drain.
Yeah, the only thing I add to that is, there's sub stages right into the sales and marketing process, and um, something you might want to think mentioning to them, right, is in this day and age, especially in the B2C market, right, like 70 to 80% of the buying decision has happened before they're ready to talk to sales, which actually plays into sales experts' hands, because if marketing can do their job and hand over a warm lead, then the sales team can focus on taking that person through the closing process a little bit faster. But the reality is marketing is playing, they're probably playing, Kristen, some sort of like, who can be first game, essentially, right? Like, we want to be the first
Yeah.
company to call you, but only after you're willing to talk to us. So it's like a chicken and egg kind of thing. Is that fair?
Oh,
Okay.
yeah. All the time. And I think that even gets into how you're saying what you're saying when you're saying it.
Mm,
So, I mentioned kind of moving through, or Greg, you mentioned the buyer's journey, but, from a creative or messaging perspective, I mean, Ashley, you get this. It's a different inflection point with a different, maybe look, but message, right?
Definitely, because you don't want to come on too strong in the beginning. That's going to turn them away. And really, the beginning of the journey should be informative. There is that awareness piece of it, but you're helping them figure
mm,
out, like, answer questions. And more than likely, they might have come to you because they had a problem that they need fixing. It's
mm.
whether it's a lack of something to improve on something they already have. And so you don't want to hit them with the like end of the journey messaging or collateral or slicks or anything like that, because it just may seem a little much, right? Like, we've all experienced in some form or fashion that overly eager, whether it's like sales process or even just journey, where you someone is bombarding you with all the questions and things, and you're like, I may not even know that I have that question, or I need to even consider that. I'm just browsing. But
Yeah.
it's important for us as marketers to make sure that we have these respective touch points that speak to those different paths, because not every customer journey is the same or buyer's journey is the same. I think that's a thing that sometimes gets ignored, where it's assumed that everyone goes through the exact same process and they come in through the same points. And so it's very important for, of course, on your side, this when you're strategizing, having all of those right touch points and having the right pieces of content that support it, because you might not need a white paper as an entry point, but it may help along the lines. So I feel as if I'm rambling a bit, but I mean, ultimately, that all of this is very important. The journey is very important, but having the right messaging through the right points of the journey make it so much easier on everyone, I think, truly.
Yeah. And make it easier for sales to know when to jump in, when that investment, it is smart to make that call, that higher touch experience. That's what I kept thinking of, when you were talking, great points is that allows us to define when and how the sales team, or help define it, should jump in and from what perspective. Because again, is it an email from Derek, or is it a phone call, or is it a visit? Watching and tracking how these leads convert down the pipe is going to give us a lot of directional insight and help us answer that. But we got to define it and start somewhere.
Where would you start, Kristen?
What's an appropriate KPI for this?
I think it's organization specific. I mean, if you're talking about an MQL, it could be a lead form. It could be a phone call. It could be a visit. It could be at the very top of the funnel. But I think that it is a little bit dependent on the organization where the value comes in. From a broad perspective, I think that top funnel KPIs like views, clicks, visits, I think they traditionally do sit a little bit higher in the value funnel, or what will pass on to sales. And then, lower towards the bottom, it's those form fills or those specific questions or those phone calls, those inbound things that come in based on content that goes out.
But Derek, I mean, what's the success metric, Derek? I mean, what should salespeople have the expectation of?
I don't know. Expectation is the right word. I mean,
okay.
They get it. Get an MQL. I think it's not really expectations. It's more of just setting of like, this is how many touch points based on previous engagement that sales needs to do to at least put this to either convert or return to marketing. So it's more of how many times are we reaching out to these people? If you're just doing it once or twice through an email or a phone call, I'll leave it up to the professionals, but that's not enough touch points,
Yeah.
So it's more of what we do after to ensure that we did everything we could to convert this lead. And then also we don't just discard once that we get a no, or we get there has to be something after. Okay, they told us no, or I got voicemail and kickbacks because we've been blacklisted, whatever it is. That's not the end of that lead. They engage with us. There needs to be something to return to keep nurturing that lead, because they just may not be ready. They may be 50% through that buying, decision process before they want to pick up the phone. So I would say, as far as success, you obviously track how it's converting from an opportunity, but also where's the magic number of touch points? Is 22 too many? Is 10 enough? I think the first part of an MQL and any type of lead management process, you do your best guess, but then like we talked about, that constant communication back of tweakment, not just saying, okay, it's 10 and we're going to leave it. It may not be 10, maybe 15, maybe 7. There's tons of software out there to speed this up. My question is, when do you introduce an inside sales team? At what threshold of how many MQLs or leads we're producing? I know there's different makeups and demographics of how big your market is, and if you have a tandem inbound outbound lead process, but in your expectations or experience,
Yeah.
when is it too much of a burden for the outside sales reps? I know there's different org structures, but a lot of questions I get is when do we bring in inside sales team?
The revenue side, right? The product team should be able to define that fairly well through the TAM and SAM analysis that the product team's done, right? They should be able to tell you, I would expect us to be able to outline that. We're working on that with a client right now. What's the total market across for this individual client? It was actually for the United States, but they're going to start regionally, so their serviceable market is significantly smaller. And so, with them, it's like, hey, you don't need that many because your number of at bats per sales cycle, which for them is going to be about 3 months. You're going to go through your entire serviceable market of your region in a year with one person. You don't need dedicated people making phone calls. You need a good marketing strategy that can identify your leads. You need to hand that over to that salesperson, and that salesperson needs to go out. And you need to have an expectation around 30% of these leads are going to convert into deals, and then X amount of those deals are going to turn into opportunities, which will tell you, right? So it's the backwards math for me from TAM and SAM, working with sales and marketing of what do we expect leads to convert at, what do we expect opportunities to close at, and what do we expect the value of that client to be. So how long are they going to be with us? What's their lifetime value or timeline? We can actually back our way into how many staff do you need to make the phone calls to hit your revenue targets. At the end of the day, and I know we've all got to go here soon for some other calls, but the backwards math actually indicates a lot of what that question entails, Derek. Then, we've got budget to hire more people. It needs to be the backwards math of what's the revenue target, what are our conversion rates, what's the total addressable market, because we've all been in organizations that, overinvest in the wrong team, whether sales, marketing, product, when ultimately the serviceable market didn't support that workload, that you ran out of leads, you ran out of clients, you ran out of whatever inside an appropriate sales cycle, because no client wants to be called 3 times in the same year to be told, said no because you called them 3 times, or you sent them a bunch of emails and tried to sell them the same product 3 times and they don't want to buy. They want to do it in their normal buying cycle, and the product team has to do a good job of TAM, SAM, and really understanding the buying cycle. How many months, how many years, how many weeks is it between making a decision, so that you can appropriately staff the right teams and put the right effort in. So you're on it.
Hold on, let's rewind that a minute.
Y'all can enjoy that one. Take that one and run with it. All right, guys. We'll see you.
Right.